Dear guests, I'm really delighted that we meet today. The weather is fine, and that we can take part in this conference and that we can organize this conference. And normally the first speaker always welcomes all the guests, but today this will be up to the second speaker because he's the host. Very warm welcome to Jens Geier, because he cannot welcome himself. So, well, we are in the Saarland region. I said this for all those who are coming from abroad. So, country characterized by steel and coal. So, the industry is still very important. Engineering, the automobile sector. But in addition to this, this country has many things to offer. And well, we, the people from here, we are really proud about this. We are the most Catholic federal state of Germany. There is no country with more Catholic people in percent. So the highest rate of people live in their own home. So it's Saarland. And we have our ministry for forestry here, and we have the largest forest area of all German federal states. This means we are a country which is characterized by its history, and that's why Europe is really important for us. In the last century, Saarland, from a political point of view, belonged to different countries. First, belonged to the German Empire, so then the Third Reich, the French occupation, then we became independent, and then later on we belonged to Germany. And my grandfather and many people here tell this because their biography is similar. So he has 5 different nationalities, or even 6. He had 6. He belonged to 6 different countries without moving once from his home. And well, in order not to repeat the history, we are struggling, and that's why Europe is so important for us. And there are some things we are proud of. And Irache, given that you are our guest today, so being independent, so when the Saarland was independent, it could take part in the Olympic Games. And the first team winning in the stadium of Real Madrid, that was Football Club of Saarbrücken, so 4-0. So today nobody believes this, but it's true. And well, we are really proud of having you here. Very warm welcome to you. So in 2 weeks, so we'll have elections to the local government. And Jens will introduce our candidate for the Prime Minister, for the Minister-President position. So she's a great leader, a great personality, and she and her team, so very competent people, very diverse team with many different personalities. And we are really proud about this, and that's why I say thank you very much for organizing this conference here at this moment of times. These times are not easy. COVID-19, war in Europe, so the framework conditions are not really good. And nobody wants to make policy in a framework like this, but we have to, and we have to make the very best of it. And the topic selected for today, working without borders, how about our future? So this is a topic important for us here, given that we have many cross-border workers here in the region. And well, I'm the spokesman for European policy, and when we talk about cross-border policy, so then I think, and that's my objective, so cross-border, we don't need this word any longer. We are just one and only social space. I wish us all an interesting evening. Thank you very much for coming, and good luck. Enjoy the conference. Thank you very much, Christian Petri. So the next speaker to be welcomed here on stage, and really admire him because he's always really close to many people. So. And I like his video podcast. So it's really good what he does. He's really committed. He's working a lot with young people. He's 60 years old, and since 40 years he's living here, and he loves Europe. And he says, The SPD political party is the political force that drives Europe, and we have the head of the SPD delegation in the European Parliament, Jens Geier.
Herzlichen Dank für die freundlichen Begrüßungsworte.
So thank you very much for these very nice words. So what you did not say, I'm in charge of the city of Nettetal. So I'm responsible, or the representative of Nettetal too. So thank you very much. So for all those dear comrades, so I warmly welcome you all on behalf of the SPD delegation in the European Parliament. So we say we are a European party, and our delegation accompanies this conference. And the dialogue with the citizens is very important because we want to learn more about the experiences the people and citizens make with Europe and what they desire in Europe, in Vilnius, in Lisbon, in Warsaw. So we are on site and we listen to the people. And thank you very much to you all for accepting our invitation. So I'm delighted to be back here in the Saarland region. So this is very close to Strasbourg, where some of us took part in a parliamentary session today. During the last 2 years, due to the pandemic, very often this has not been possible. And that's why today we want to set up a dialogue with you. We want to know your experiences, the experiences you make in this border region. And this is related too to the very bad news coming from Ukraine, because we have to talk about this. We have to talk about how we can strengthen and foster our democratic and free European Union. These values of freedom, liberty, democracy, that's what dictators dislike and do not like at all, and that's why it is worth to improve Europe further and strengthen it further. But first, I wish the very best to Anke Rehlinger. So she really would have liked to be here today, but as you know, as the Minister for Labor and Economy of Saarland, she is strongly interested in the topic of work. Unfortunately, you cannot be here today, but I hope you will cure quickly, and I hope the next time in our next conference we'll have the opportunity to welcome you here. Well, she sent us some greetings, some words in form of a video. And Reinhold Joos, my old friend, is here, Minister for the Environment and Consumer Protection. So he will replace Anke. So thank you very much for coming. You're really committed, strongly committed. And you have many things to do in the current electoral campaign. So thank you very much for taking your time and for coming here. Thank you very much for this. And then all the experts here, we want to discuss with them this evening. And I will start with the person who is coming from the so-called greater region. So that's how it is called. So somebody from Luxembourg, from the European Commission, Nicolas Schmidt, representing the European Commission. Thank you very much for coming. And so then, so many colleagues from the European Parliament are here, and and basically our host, so the head of our delegation, Irache Garcia Perez. Thank you very much for coming. Very welcome to you. So then, the Vice President of the European Parliament, Katharina Barley, Vice President of the European Parliament and MEP of the SPD. And well, she will address the audience later on. Gabriele Bischoff, very warm welcome to you. S&D Vice President, and she's a member of the Commission and the conference Future of Europe. Thank you very much for coming. And then, in addition, our friend and colleague from Luxembourg, Marc-Angel, thank you very much for coming. Welcome to you. So many committed experts are here for our World Coffee. Dear Eugen Roth, Lisa Kersch, Kira Braun, Timo Stockhorst, thank you very much for coming and being here and supporting us. So, I think we will gather and achieve good results. We will get closer together the people in this border region. So a unified Europe, that's the best response to conflicts, to wars. We all have to deal and struggle all together, combating in the combat against climate change. Thank you very much. So the next lady I would like to welcome here on stage. She's a social worker, and since the age of 20 years, she's a member of the Spanish Labour Party, PSOE. So she grew up in a rural area where Europe sometimes appears to be quite far away, and she is struggling and fighting for a feminist, ecological, unified and solidarian Europe. And what I really like, and it is important from my point of view, so she really wants to do something for women. And we are welcoming the head of the SPD delegation, the European Parliament, Irache Garcia Perez. She's the leader of the S&D group in the European Parliament and a member of the European Parliament.
Speak in Spanish, maybe you will need a translation. Muchas gracias, en primer lugar, por compartir con todos nosotros este encuentro para hablar, para escucharnos, para proponer y para construir más y mejor Europa. Quiero comenzar dando las gracias, por supuesto, a la delegación alemana del Grupo de Socialistas y Demócratas, a Jens Geier, su jefe de delegación, y, por supuesto, Gaby y Caterina. Es importante que seamos capaces de abrir los debates en todos y cada uno de los territorios.
Ich kann das nicht.
Deutscher Kanal. Consciente de que el momento de que esta situación
Aber es kommt nirgendwo.
Yeah, so we have the military intervention in Ukraine. So this dictator, Putin, and that's why we all are in a very complicated situation. So we have hope, but on the other hand, we are all aware that today, more than ever, we need to secure the future of Europe, because the invasion of Putin in the Ukraine is not just an invasion in the Ukrainian territory. It's an aggression against European values, against freedom, against democracy, against justice. So it is an attack, an aggression by Putin. And today, more than ever, we need to strengthen the European project. And that's what we have to do, along with all of you. So I'm coming from a rural area, from Castilla y León in Spain, so a rural area, so with a very big extension. Nonetheless, we share some things with your region here. So, for instance, mines. Well, during the last years, we suffered a lot because we had a difficult and complicated transition. We had economic and social and societal problems, and we are obliged to make progress. We have to strengthen Europe. We need a more sustainable Europe, and we have to do all this. And we have to help at the same time those who are in difficulties. That refers to us all, and this brings us into a situation where we have to comply with our objectives, ecological objectives. We have to secure social and societal justice. So I do not know the reality in detail of all the European regions and border regions, and that's why I'm even happier to share these experiences today with you. Well, in times of the pandemic, this may help us. In these times, we had to protect the health of the people. We had to give a European answer to this political crisis, and the European Union may be an engine, may strive for solidarity. It may be a source for future prosperity. And thanks to all this, we could set up or could improve social rights in Europe. Nicolas Schmidt is here. He did a great job in this area. And that's why I say that's the moment to set up an holistic strategy. We need legal instruments on all the levels. So we have to pass from words to action. So the moment of action has come. We have been talking a lot about principles, but now we have to stop talking and we have to start acting. We have to change the life of the people, because that's the aim and the function and mission of the policy makers. And we, the social Democrats, we want to change and improve the life of the people. We have been giving some important answers. We increased or we improved the situation of all those getting the minimum salary. So we should not repeat the errors of the past. So we should avoid to reduce rights. We have to give more rights to the people. And here we are in a region, in the border region, and that's fundamental to consider. So we need equal rights for all the workers, and we have to guarantee free circulation. This is a right. This is a fundamental element of the European project. We have the common unique market. That's why we need these rights. We need this social model of Europe. Freedom is important for us. Very often we had difficulties on the way or in the history of the European Union. But mobility is important for the people. And sometimes we had companies exploiting the people, fraudulent companies in different countries of the European Union, operating in some countries, making very huge offers and promising many things, and all of a sudden the people see that this has nothing to do with the reality. We have to secure the rights of the people. We need to set up barriers for this kind of fraud. In some countries, this is still difficult. Sometimes when people wants to work in another country, they still find many difficulties. And freedom of movement is still our objective. But there are other political forces which are opposed to this. We have to see that these movements, I refer to racist movements, extreme right-wing movements, we have to fight against them. We have to defend the interest of these workers, and that's why I say we have to take our responsibility. We have to improve the life of the people. We have to think about the situation of migrants. We have to improve their situation too. Sometimes we have national authorities which do not consider migrants as people having the right to work. Or that's a reality in many countries, in many regions of the European Union. We have many migrants coming to us. They pay taxes, they pay for social insurance, and nonetheless, then they don't get a pension or they don't get any allocation. And thanks to our work, we made a lot of progress during the last mandate. We could reform many things, many laws in the area of labor rights and legislation. And so we increased transparency and we improved many things. So we are fighting for equal salaries for women and men, but we still can do more. We can do much more. There are still many things to do in the future, and what we need, we have to keep on working, and we have to open up this debate and this discussion to all of you, because anybody is able to make important contribution. And that's why we are here. That's why we are here. We are here with people, with young workers, with people from trust unions, and everybody is able to contribute to the construction of Europe. That's what we need. And we need in the future a European authority for the area of labor, with the right of controlling many things. We're fraudulent companies, but these companies should not be enabled and allowed to operate in the European market. So we have to make sure that work guarantees a life in dignity. Otherwise, it is not acceptable. So we have to think about the most vulnerable people. And we have a class of working people here which is not able to live in dignity. Well, they have work, but they do not get sufficient money for paying their electricity bill. They do not reach the end of the month with their money. And our idea and our objective as socialists is to help them, is to support them, is to improve their life and to prevent any discrimination of any people. Europe must provide a guarantee to all the people for a life in dignity. These aspects are crucial. We have to defend mobility of workers in security and safety. We have to secure the rights of the people, and that's our fundamental task. And well, today we have a conference on the future of Europe, and we have the opportunity to exchange with each other. We have the opportunity to learn from each other. That's the aim of this event, and one thing is clear. Nosotros, we are always here to help you. We need a more ecological, a more sustainable, a more feminist Europe, and I hope you all will support us here. Thank you very much for coming, and I'm really looking forward to the exchange with you.
And I'm looking forward to the next speaker. Thank you, Ms. Garcia Perez. I'm looking forward to welcoming the next woman on stage because I like her for her clear words and her statement. We need to be more courageous. We need to do even more for Europe. Europe is at her heart because she has a German and a British passport. And her children have grandparents from 4 European countries, and not only therefore, she is a passionate European. Welcome to Europe, to Saarbrücken, to the Vice President of the European Parliament and Member of the European Parliament, Katharina Barley. Thank you, Ms. Straten. I think your hosting today is a wonderful job. It's also good to see you all here. Welcome to Irache. It's nice to see you too. I am to tell you something about the future of Europe in the border regions. And I take the liberty to go beyond the core topic, social and working, because I think that the future of Europe has much more to it than just the border regions. These days, we are all constantly thinking about what's happening in Ukraine, and we perceive Europe as something that has been set up for peace. That's the basic idea of the European Union. That was the conviction of the founding fathers and mothers, and we see that the people in Ukraine want to be a part of the European Union, want to turn westward, because we stand for democracy, for human rights, and for the principle of law. How can you perceive this in the border region? The basic idea of the European Union was also to create that peace, that curricula, interests, and regions become intertwined, and that is exactly what's happening here. We get to know each other, we exchange. Sometimes we play football against each other, we fall in love, we get married, whatever. These border regions are exemplary for what Europe should be. Many of you have a moved background. If you have read the European Landboote, there were cut patterns. And if you would mark all the areas where we had fights in the last couple of 100 years, you don't see any white spot any longer. There was always war somewhere. And that we achieve peace with this constant exchange, that is something we can really be proud of. Martina Straten has explained in her introduction, and I hardly remember it, the closed borders with the uniformed officers asking for your passport. How different is the culture, how different is this perception of the border, because the only thing you realize is when you lose reception on your mobile phone, and that's what tells you, oh, I left France and I'm now in Germany. I remember at the time my former boyfriend, later husband, we drove from Trier to Madrid. When Euro was introduced, we took 4 currencies with Deutsche marks, Luxembourgish francs, French francs, and Spanish pesetas. And we came home with only 1 wallet because we only needed the euro at the time. And that is also something that unites us, that connects us. I'm now from Cologne. I'm a very open, a very hugging person. That is my conviction. But the wonderful thing about these border regions is that you don't just step over a border, but you go through the portal to a new world. If you go to Luxembourg or to France, you look forward to the cheese supply in supermarkets or the wine shelf. If we go to Luxembourg, when we go to Luxembourg, Luxembourg is a very special neighbor with your financial opportunities. When you can benefit from the cultural scene there, we love to go there, the small Luxembourg. We have common schools, common kindergartens, common sporting grounds, wastewater treatment facilities. We have trains and buses that go across the border. But we are united in manifold. We can benefit from each other. We can learn from each other. And it humbles you. What really annoys me is the people who think that the way it is at their place is the only way there is. And that is something you see very often in Germany. I'm half British. In Britain, we have the roundabouts for about 50 years now. And at one point, they came out in Germany and they celebrated themselves. And if they only had looked across the channel for once, they would have found out much earlier. And in other countries, that's the same. At the German-Polish border, Polish people come to Germany to work. And the Germans go to Poland to do cheap shopping. Our caretakers all work in Luxembourg, and we in Trier are happy when the Luxembourg people bring their money and spend it in our city. You're not always the big boss. You are once the one thing, and on another point, another thing. 200,000 people commute here across the border in this greater region. That is really exceptional. It is good for prosperity. It opens our horizons, and it's a fragile environment. I've talked to Jean Asselborn in the border when the with Jean Asselborn when the borders were closed unilaterally from Germany. Nicholas, you must have perceived it the same. When there's armed forces on the border bridge and they control your passport and all the German cars are just waved through, that really brings back what we used to have. But it also showed us all how important this unified Europe is to each and every one of us. And that's why, that's my closing remark, that is why the future of Europe is in the border regions, because we live in Europe, because we connect Europe, because we are the ones to really know what it would be like if Europe wouldn't exist anymore. So let's take care of it. Thank you, Katharina Barley. Before we come to the video message by Anke Rehlinger, I wanted to ask the next speakers to come up on stage. We've set up the stage so pretty and nobody's here. So I'd like to ask Mr. Joost, Ms. Bischoff and Mr. Schnipp to come to stage and to participate from here, because then you will also have a shorter way when your turn is up. Have a seat. Wonderful. Ms. Rehlinger, I would have really liked to welcome her tonight. I was excited to hear what our Minister for Labour and Economy had to say. She is sick with COVID, and it's better she has it now than in 2 weeks' time. But we do have a video message from her. We will listen to it now, we will watch it now, and I'm sure she is as devastated as we all are that she cannot be here. Dear comrades, ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, a warm welcome to tonight's event. All of you know that I'm a very positive person. Right now, a bit too positive because I have caught COVID. And that is the only reason that was able to keep me back from being with you at this wonderful event. But at least I want to give you my greetings for this event, and I want to thank you all that you came to discuss the question of the future of Europe and of the border regions here in Saarland. The people in Saarland don't talk about Europe, or don't just talk about Europe. We live Europe every day. We are Europe. And that in two dimensions, as I perceive Europe every time. In the rather emotional dimension, when it's about targets and visions, when it's about the common values and the future of young people in all of Europe, but also about very practical questions. What about the certificate if I work on the other side of the border? What about social rights and pension rights where not everything is clarified? Or the very big questions, a common migration policy, a common climate policy, or in these days, a common peace and foreign policy. All of that is to be thought together and needs to be made together, because only then it will come to a good end if it is done by people, for people. And that's where we are a wonderful area of approach, the largest labor market that is crossing borders in Europe. And if it works here, it will work in other areas. We are a real lab and can contribute a lot, but not only from a technical perspective, but also because we are very close to our neighbors in France and Luxembourg at the heart, because we have cultural events together, sporting events together, and we don't only think about work in our region. So it's good to talk about how we can improve what is already good, because only that will leave us with a strong Europe for the future. Thank you all for discussing these questions tonight at this event and help us to improve real Saarland love at the heart of Europe. That is basically the idea that is standing above everything else, and that is what drives us every day. I wish you all a very good event, a very nice course of event, a warm welcome. We love to have you tonight and any other time. Thank you to Anke Rehlinger. And the man who will now speak to you is a real Saarland man. He loves our cuisine, and he also worked in the mines. I like his smile and his fight for the environment. Saarland has become the #1 in organic farming, and Saarland people say that he's a doer and not just a talker. Welcome to the Minister for Environment and Consumer Protection in Saarland, Mr. Reinhold Jost. Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, members of parliament, dear comrades, yes, I would have liked to enjoy this evening differently and wanted to listen to Anke Rehlinger and her definition of Saarland love, but her video greeting is not only a good cause for Saarland and Europe, but also for Europe. If Anke Rehlinger would become the next minister president of this government to have a confirmed European, it would not only be good for Saarland in the person of Anke Rehlinger, but also in her way of living for Europe. It has been pointed out repeatedly, Saarland is not on the border of Germany, but we are at the heart of Europe and we live Europe. For us, it's not cliché. It is a cause of happiness and luck for us, and that is why we are convinced Europeans. And that goes back to our experience that has been stated. Without coal and steel, Saarland wouldn't exist. It was always thought about how often people here have changed nationalities or have had to change nationalities, not because one or the other country was better, but the result of war and all the things that they try to indoctrinate the people that there is hatred between German and French people. For me, Europe is not the problem, but for me, Europe is the solution and the key for our future development. And that's where we in Saarland, as I think also in the last month and years, we had to face hard challenges, not just with the closed borders during COVID times, especially thanks to the German Christian Democrats, but also with the consequences of Brexit that nobody expected. Also, the gap that is growing between East and Western Europe, thinking about the discussions with Poland and Hungary, and that is what rages me, what really makes me sad when you look at what's happening in Ukraine. To really understand what my grandfather, born in 1902 and died in 1993, has given to me on his deathbed, he told me, I wish you two things in life: never be hungry and never war again. And that is what we need to do. We need to call on everyone to contribute, and that we don't need less but more Europe, because Europe is the real dream of peace and prosperity. It's more than just the free movement of goods and to have a common currency and to cross the border without passports. It's peace and liberty, and it needs to be fought for every day. We are facing big challenges, and then that we can only overcome together with our partners and friends in Europe. Willing to go more for Europe. And Katharina, you said it wonderful. It's everyday life for each and every one of us. And we all forgot the positive change we have achieved. We are angry about many things that we consider way too bureaucratic. I'm not saying that as a minister for agriculture, but it brought so many advantages. Pupils exchanges, studies abroad, binational families, all that is everyday life and makes and has become normal. But it must not be self-understood. We need to remind ourselves how important it is to keep working on what we have achieved so that it will not be taken from us. We need more emotions in Europe and for Europe. What Anke just said, Saarland love, is also love for Europe. And I'm telling you here as well, what Europe needs even more, and that's something what we've seen at the federal elections last year. We need a strong social democratic policy in Europe, and that is what we want and what we want to continue. Europe has always been done in a very pragmatic way. After the devastation of the Second World War, it was a peace project, then a reconstruction, then it was about safeguarding the feeding of the people with a common agricultural policy, the European Union for coal and steel to unite economy and social domains. All that brought about the next objectives, that is fight against climate change and its consequences. How do we change our societies? What role should digitization play? And in the end, it cannot be just one thing. The market cannot dominate the people, but social justice is what we need more in Europe and not less. In this context, I want to shortly outline a couple of things. Climate change is the task of the century. With the European Green Deal and the reconstruction project Next Generation EU, and also the new European budget, we have set important instruments, and now we need to bring these projects to life. And I'm also saying this because in social democratic policies, we tend to weep about what has not gone well, but we should also talk about the things that we have done well, and the social democrats' handwriting in European policies you cannot discuss away. It's something that we can be proud of. I am for sure that our contribution is visible in all of the areas of European policy making, and that is also what you as members of European parliaments can be proud of. And if I take a look at the economic policy, it's not a contradiction. On the contrary, it's the logic consequence to have industrial added value, not just services. If you believe that without industry you can combat climate change in Europe, has no idea. We need both, and we need to think about both together. And once again, Saarland can serve as a good example for all those who are willing to look. We have already said that we look back on a long history with a strong industrial core. With Saarland, the most European of all federal states in Germany, we will continue developing it. It's about hydrogen industry, it's added value in industry, it's about promoting fair competition that needs to be set up for everyone in Europe. It's about transport, and it's about the question how we can master a problem that at the time was capitalism without borders, and right now it's digitization. The currency in this century is data, is personal data, is what you can make of personal data. And if you take a look at the exchanges, the largest companies or the most valued companies on stock exchanges are those dealing in data. And I don't want others to make a lot of money because they have access to my data, and I'm happy that it's social democrats, also you, Katharina, as former minister, you have transformed this topic into the European Parliament. We need a strong consumer protection in terms of our own data and consumer protection. We also need to look out that the imbalances don't grow ever more in Europe. These imbalances need to be tackled. That was also mentioned before, because they give rise to populism. In economy and currency policies, we need to make sure that the weak don't grow ever weaker and the strong grow ever stronger. It's not the right of the strongest, but it's the strength of law that applies, and that's nothing you need to be ashamed of. When in this situation, you call in for that principle. In this context, I think we have every right to protect the weaker from the strong and wealth, and that is part of our DNA as social democrats. I also want to say that it's about a social Europe, minimum wage, fair wages, fair working conditions. It's defending social achievements, fair regulations that we also see here in our border region. And I go back one step in connection with industrial policy. I have a steelworker's background and also worked in that domain. In this connection, I've learned three things. Number one, that in your life you have several stations to understand the reality of life. I do not regret taking in this reality. Then I have turned to become a finance official, which means that I've gotten to know both worlds. And the second thing that I took away, that there is a transformation process, especially in steel industry, also in terms of technical development that are important for climate change. Hundreds of millions that have been invested, that the air is cleaner and the water is better in terms of working and health protection. And number three that I took away with me, and that is one of the things that really drive me forward, why we need a strong industrial core and a strong steel industry. It's not because it's just good labor, that it's jobs with perspective. It's the last strong area where the unions actually collaborate strongly, and that's why we don't only need that strong industrial core in Saarland, but in Europe as a whole. A second thing I'd like to mention, that is our driving motor for European progress. Europe is here with us. It's not far away. And it's not just Brussels, Strasbourg, or Luxembourg. Here in Saarland, it's just across the border in Lorraine or in Luxembourg. You see it in Leidingen, in the village on the border, where one side of the road is French and the other is German, where people have suffered, but today they live together as friends. We see it in Perl with Schengen Lyceum, with a secondary school and an interconnection that could not be any more positive. And we also see it every day with what Europe makes possible for all of us. I'm Minister for Environment and Consumer Protection, and also for rural areas. And also from my own cliché perspective, when you go to Poland, to Italy, to France or Spain, and you see the number of projects with signs, this investment was made possible by the European Union, and you sometimes wonder, well, we've paid it all. But I also tell you very clearly that in Germany we have simply set up too few signs to show how we benefited from Europe. And I'm very proud and happy that with the new promotion of GAP and EGLA, that we have so much money in Saarland, and it's mainly European money, and we will make sure that we improve our rural areas here in Saarland even further than before. We have #1 in organic farming, and we want to promote the forests. Our rural areas benefit from Europe, and that's something that we need to tell the people so that they understand and also know how to value Europe and the European Union. It's about continuing the work, because real Saarland love is also real Europe love. And Anke Rehlinger cannot say it so herself, but I'm very sure she would be proud of what we have achieved in terms of cross-border labor market, the options we still want to improve to get better transportation to across the borders, to have hydrogen production. We live Europe because we know that we have big advantages from it. It's now about building a further interconnection. I personally work very closely together with the Central Laboratory in Luxembourg, and it's a lot of fun because you realize that you don't need everything twice or 3 times, and it works as we work together as partners. In the cross-border region, we work together on an exemplary basis, and we are a lab on the highest level, but also with a lot of empathy for Europe. We want to also promote other areas of collaboration, health, for instance, which also emerged in times of the pandemic for further collaboration. Without collaborating, without asking many questions between Lorraine, Saarland, Rhineland-Palatinate, and Luxembourg, a lot would have been worse. We know each other, we value each other, and we collaborate. Living on the border has left its mark on the people in Saarland. And there is a lack for words to the setback we are going through in terms of families and friends with Ukraine and Russia that is similar to what we have here. I've said already that Europe is a very fragile piece of the world history, and we must not let it fall into hands that want to use it for the worse. It needs to be defended every day. We do that in various functions and areas, but always in peace and in working together instead of working against each other. On the border we live, Europe is our everyday life, and this border region is a model and lab for Europe. But we need to continue working for Europe to be more palpable for the people, to get fresh impulse for collaboration and solidarity. We need to draw lessons from Brexit and COVID nationalism, and also from backwards populism. And just especially us as social democrats, we are the ones who may never relax, may never turn away from that. We are the ones who have given our lives over the course of the last century. We are the ones who have never lost this esprit of Europe. We want a future for Europe because it's a future of peace and prosperity for the people. Glück auf.
Thank you very much, Reinhold Joost. And the man who's coming next, he knows a lot about the life in the border region. He knows the commuters. He knows He knows how they deal with the border, almost 200,000 commuters in this region. And he's well aware that the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, showed to us that Europe in an exceptional situation, may be fragile. And he is strongly committed to changing this. He wants to secure fair conditions for all the cross-border workers. So let us welcome European Commissioner Nicolas Schmit. He's the EU Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights. Very warm welcome to you. Dear friends, so I would rather like to say dear guests, because I'm coming from this greater region too. Well, for me, it's a great pleasure to be here in Saarbrücken today and to take part in this conference on the topic of the future of Europe. And in addition, well, I take part in this conference where our friend and former colleague, Anke, so we want to provide our full support to her. So please try to get cured as fast as possible in order to be ready to be elected as Minister President of the Saarland region. Well, basically, I should talk now about this labor market here in the greater region. But nonetheless, first, I have to say a couple of words regarding the current situation, the situation we are in. And thank you very much to you, Reinhard. You really, your speech was marvelous. You are a real European. Thank you very much for this speech. Well, I remember that in the year 1995, we all were very optimistic. The wall fell. Soviet Union did not exist any longer. And we all thought that now freedom, market economy would reign all over Europe. And then the French president, Mr. Mitterrand, in one of his very large speeches in the European Parliament, said the following sentence, and we should remember this sentence today. Nationalism means war, stands for war. And to be honest, at this moment of time, I was not really convinced by this, because we all were convinced that the war belonged to the past, and that we overcame war, that we would live in security and be safe in Europe. And all of a sudden, we have a war again in Europe. And the threat, the nuclear threat, and really have to take it very serious. They are clearly announced, and the fear of the people can be seen again, as we could see it some decades ago in the same region. My father, he lived this war, and he's still alive. And he passed through real tragical moments. And when I was a young man, so I always have been remember these tragical moments. And when I see these sad images now on TV, then I feel that a couple of decades ago, the refugees threatened by the bombs and bombings, they felt the same way. They had fear, they were afraid. They were afraid as the people are today in the Ukraine. And that's why our solidarity with the Ukraine is paramount. We have to support them, and we must be we must show our solidarity with them. We have to help them. We have to mobilize everything they need in order to make sure that these people will not be a lost generation. So the dictator, the destroyer from Moscow, he wants one thing. He wants to destroy the European nations, a nation of people who feel like Europeans. because they smell the taste of democracy and freedom. So Putin, wants to destroy this nation, wants to destroy their young people, not only the buildings, their homes. He wants to destroy the people too. And we should not allow him to do so. We should impede him to do so. Yes, it is true. Europe maybe is a kind of a product, and that's something I read somewhere. And I quote Stalin. So, the fear from Stalin, the fear that the Stalinistic Russia, the Soviet Union, could launch a new war, and that was a constant threat at the end of the 40s in the Czech Republic, in Poland, and in other countries of Eastern Europe. And the reaction at this moment of time was that we said, well, we need a unified Europe, not only to improve our economic situation, but in addition, in order to defend our freedom and in order to prevent a war between European people. We achieved this goal. But today, we have to face a new challenge. And when we think about it, and when we think about the future of Europe, then I feel that the future of Europe started already, and we have to react very quickly. We have to act very quickly. We have to build up our future very quickly. So you said it in a marvelous way. Europe, you said, is very fragile in many areas. And this fragilities, we have to overcome this fragility. We have to come back to our roots. Europe needs solidarity, but Europe needs solidity too. That's why we have to be able to bind the people and to involve the people in the European project. And considering the surveys, then I'm quite optimistic. And well, we carried out these studies before February 24. So about the expectations of the Europeans regarding Europe. They expect more solidarity, and they do not say, what do we have to pay for? Well, it is true. We have inequality. That's what they say. First topic, first aim, we have to fight against inequality in our societies, inequality between different European peoples. And that's what we have to build up. That's what we have to do, and we have to do it quickly, because otherwise we will lose. We will lose our future. We will lose the people. We will lose the European people, and we will lose the young people. And we need the young people to solidify and to strengthen Europe. Jacques Delors once he said, so we will not get lost in the unique market, in the inner market. And that's true. So the illusion, and that's a point where I'm really critical referring to Europe. So sometimes we had the illusion that the market would make it all. So the inner market would be something like a miracle, liberalizing it all, and the market would always make the best decisions. During the pandemic, we saw that the market is sometimes not very helpful. If we do not have strong states and a strong Europe, our economies, and not only the economy, but the entire societies would be in a much more complicated situation. And that's why I think we, the Social Democrats, we are passing through a strong moment, because we have to show the people that we are able to provide and offer many good solutions, not only in the area of foreign policy. So foreign policy is important, for sure. So defense, our military capabilities, very important too. And what the German Chancellor, Mr. Scholz, did, he made the right decision. But this does not mean that all of a sudden we would have to invest all our money in defense and military, and anything else is of secondary importance. No, we have to even it out. We have to even out our policies. Sure, we need a strong, common European defense policy, along with our friends, the United States, and I hope we can count on them in the future too. That's not sure. And that's why we need a Europe which is growing from inside too. And growing from inside, this means more social cohesion too. And I think in this region here, this region is a good example. So more than 200,000 people are commuting, are working on the other side of the border. So I know how the Luxembourgish labor market works. So without the commuters, our labor market in Luxembourg wouldn't work. Our hospitals wouldn't work without these commuters coming from abroad, from the neighbor countries. Katharina, you said it and you're right. The people are looking for a job where they find the best conditions, labor conditions. And that's what happens all over Europe. 13 million of Europeans are working not in the country where they live, but in another country. That's what makes Europe strong. But on the other hand, that means the right of any individual worker must be recognized and guaranteed. And well, we are quite close to the city of Schengen, and very often I hear that, well, there are doubts about Schengen. Is that freedom of movement? Well, Schengen is a fundamental piece of Europe and of this region, and for this region too. Well, you're right. You mentioned the problems we had during the pandemic. And all of a sudden, during this pandemic, we had these bad thoughts in our mind. And that showed to us that this European conviction is still fragile. So we still have these national thoughts. All of a sudden, there is mistrust, or maybe mistrust, and that's why this freedom of movement is crucial for all of us, not only in this region, not only for our economic prosperity and development in this region. It is important for all Europe. But we do not just need the market. We need rules. If we want to secure freedom of movement, we need rules, social rules. And those who decide to work somewhere else, so they want their social rights to be secured. They want to make sure that they get a pension, or when they are sick, that there is a sick fund covering their hospitalization, or when they lose their job, that they get a payment, or that they get unemployment allocation. You know what I refer to. So, without referring to numbers, the unemployed people, we have to help them. These people have to feel safe. These people need, when unemployed, they need and they have the right to have an allocation once they are unemployed. Because before, during their employment, they pay taxes. Well, we will keep on developing this. We will keep on developing this and in our social insurance systems. So we still have problems to coordinate them. And Europe has to do more. But on the other hand, our labor, our world of labor is completely changing. You refer to the production of steel. In Luxembourg, we had steel production too. And it would be really bad if Europe, or if this region, would lose their steel production. Not only it would be bad for the thousands of workers working in these industries, so with their social rights, with the salaries, with the wages they get, with their collective agreements. But in addition, now we learned what it means to be completely dependent from gas. It doesn't matter if we're referring to masks or steel or energy or gas. So Europe must must free itself from this dependence. And we have to give a perspective to the people working in these areas. There is huge potential. So how can we make sure that steel can be manufactured without generating carbon emissions? Well, we have to make huge investments. We have to define the right economic policy. We have to take into account the geopolitical situation. Or referring to the automobile sector, electric mobility, great idea, I like it. But on the other hand, we have to make sure that the people working in this industry, so we cannot tell them, we have to shut down your factory because you are not qualified, you don't have the skills for electric mobility. So we have to restructure our industry, but at the same time we have to secure justice for all the regions. Europe is nothing abstract. It is very concrete. Europe is lived in the regions, in the cities, in the villages. And well, I'm coming from a small village too. And that's where we have to start working. We have to give the feeling to the people that Europe supports them, that it's not just directives coming from Europe, but that Europe is working very closely and is very close to them. We have the Committee of the Regions in the European Union. And we, the European Commission, our mission is to get in touch with the people instead of observing them from the 10th floor or 15th floor of our skyscraper in Brussels. It doesn't work like that. That's why I say, dear friends, the Social Democracy, the Social Democrat Party have to be committed to this. And then one more word, telework helped us a lot during the pandemic. It saved us. Thousands and thousands of people could continue to work because all of a sudden we used the technical and technological equipment, and without this telework, the economic and social situation would have been much worse. But on the other hand, we have to see and define how we deal with this from a social point of view. How do we prevent injustice? So everybody shall have the right to have spare time too, free time too, because human beings are not robots. That's why we need certain rules, or social insurance, tax systems. Create many problems in these regions where we have thousands of commuters. Sometimes the people do not know where they have to pay for their social insurance, in which country, or where they have to pay taxes. And we have to give answers. And that's what the citizens, the European citizens, expect from us. That's what we can read. That's what we can learn from the surveys. The citizens tell us. So they ask for good minimum wages. They ask for more cooperation. They want to secure mobility. Mobility is an important issue. And that shows that, well, health, another important topic. So these people do not read treaties and say then, oh, that's written in the contracts, in the treaties. No, they want Europe to get active, to get involved, because they are aware that we cannot solve the problems on a national level. They are aware that Europe must be part of a solution. Otherwise, there won't be a solution at all. And that's our hope, and that has to be our approach for this conference. And then we have to make the right. Then we have to draw the right conclusions. And I count on you, Gabi, on our delegation in the European Parliament. So the social dimension. And maybe Putin even gave us a small impulsion, as Stalin did in the year 1955. Because maybe this helps us to strengthen Europe further. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nicholas Schmidt. She is a passionate European who is strongly fighting for the women's rights in Europe because she's also a strong believer in feminism. She says that it can't be so difficult to pay the same wages for the same work, and she's absolutely right about that. To this day, women make less than their male colleagues. The wage gap is 18%, and COVID made it abundantly clear. 1 in 4 mothers reduced their working time during the pandemic. Here is the vice head of the S&D faction and member of the S&D, member of the European Parliament, Gabriele Bischoff. Dear comrades, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start with Anke because it touched me deeply and it showed me once again as a Berlin woman that Europe is nothing only from the head because it's better, because there's the common market, because we have the euro, but that Europe in this region, regardless of whether you're from Saarbrücken, from Luxembourg, whether you come from somewhere in Lorraine, that Europe is a feeling of life, of living, something that unites us all regardless of where we are from. Europe unites us, Katharina mentioned it, and in multitude we are not only Germans, Luxembourgish or French, and we can also benefit from the differences. We have also realized that there were many crises that touched Europe. The financial crisis, the pandemic was difficult in the beginning. We then managed to get by, and we now stand to face the largest challenge Europe has to face. We have a war on our continent, and we don't know what will be in 4 weeks or in 2 months' time. We see the people, and we see their hope in Europe. And that is the idea of this future conference tonight. 2019, after the election, we came together as Parliament, and after Brexit and everything, we can't just simply keep going as before. We need to restart. And just like tonight, we wanted to reach all the people in Europe, and Nicholas mentioned it also very nicely. We don't want to sit in our towers in Strasbourg or in Brussels, but we want to go to the people, and we want to listen to the people. And we'll bring 800 people from Europe together to come together for multiple weekends, multiple days, and to talk about all of those topics, questions about war and peace, this large transformation, climate change, digitization. How can we face all those challenges, globalization that is also in a crisis, how to make it more just? All these questions, we know that we cannot solve them on a national level, but that we listen to the people and listen to their suggestions. And the citizens have convened, and they have come up with good suggestions that are very close to the lives of people. They're saying that everyone in Europe should get decent wages, that he has social security, that we are innovative, that we promote our economy. They have had very concrete suggestions. But On the other hand, this future conference did not manage to arrive in all the areas. And that's why I wanted to ask you, who in the audience has heard about this future conference prior to tonight? There's only a couple hands going up, but it's more than we would have in Ruhr area or in Berlin, because we are at the heart of Europe. But that's why we, as the S&D fraction, are not the ones to only listen to what these people are saying. The soul mother from Germany, the Estonian engineer, the worker from Poland, we're not only listening to them, but as an S&D faction, we go to Europe. We are in Saarbrücken, we were in Firenze, and we will go to other places in Europe. And after these encouraging speeches, we want all of you to contribute. And that's what we have set up for topic tables tonight. And we have great anchor men and women who will start the discussions on those tables, but who are also available for questions, to collect your ideas, your comments, and all of the colleagues that are here tonight will take them back to this future conference. And that's why I want to come back to that feeling. I'm very excited to see the results, and we all learn. And I'd like to close on one remark because it's very fitting. I've talked to a lot of young people recently, because this future conference and the citizens that have come together in that conference, that's 30% youngsters. And if we want to set up the future, we need other and younger ideas to create our future. But these young people have presented me with one idea that I really want to take back to that conference on the future, that I want to also give to you. I'm active in European policy for 25 years, and the youngsters have said what we need as young people who want to go to study abroad, want to do an apprenticeship somewhere else. We want every EU citizen to have the right to learn about mobility, to understand how it works. And I asked myself, how have we never come up with that idea? That's something I would like to give you into as a start for your debate. You will soon learn about the various topics on the various tables, pandemic in cross-border working, the cultural areas, how we can expand on them, social work, how the youngsters can create Europe. All that is what we can discuss, which is why I'd like to hand back to our anchorwoman tonight and will not keep you from working, so that we can all benefit from your contributions tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gabriele Bischoff. Thank you, Reinhold Joost and Nicolas Schmidt, for these great speeches, for your conviction and passion and what we can take along. Before we move on to the World Cafe, we'd like to take a picture with all the speakers that have been represented tonight. If I can ask you to once again come on stage, we will have a picture taken together. We have, in light of the pandemic, decided to wear our masks, but it's nice to have you on stage. I'll go to the side. Yes, the photo will be taken in landscape format. Thank you. So we'll now move to this exciting piece of the World Cafe with the topic tables. Every table will discuss a different topic. There's anchor people for the tables who will serve for the various tables and will then present the results. There's also color coding on the table so that you understand where to go. On table number 1, that's the blue table, it's on strengthening social Europe perspectives from the border region with Marc Angel from Luxembourg, member of the European Parliament, and also with Thomas Wasch, the most active participant of the debating platform Progressives for Europe, on the conference on the future of Europe. It's nice for you to applaud them. Table number 2, the yellow table, is restarting our economy, opportunities and risks in the border region, moderated by Eugen Roth, Vice Chair DGB's Rheinland-Palatinate and Saarland. On the green table, we have learning the lessons from the pandemic, experiences from mobile workers, hosted by Christine Jung. She is head of a department in the Ministry for Economy in Saarbrücken. On the green table. Table number 4, purple, living and learning across borders, opportunities for young people. Hosted by Lisa Kasch, co-leader of the Young Socialists in Luxembourg, and Kira Braun, chair of the Young Social Democrats SPD in Saarland. And then there's table number 5, the red table, fostering border regions as political and cultural spaces, living labs, hosted by Timo Stockhorst, chair of JEF, the Young European Federalists in Saarland. We are very proud of these young participants on the tables and look forward to a very lively exchange. We would like to ask you to join your tables if you need help. If something should be unclear, we will certainly help you. We will come back here to learn about the results of the various tables. Thank you for now and talk to you soon.
Was?
Was?
Giuseppe.
Yes, come with me. Ja.
Ah, nee, ist okay.
Orange.
Hallo? Hallo. Nur ganz kurz.
So, very shortly, an information. So this is table number 1, Social Europe. So excuse me, there is a kind of confusion, but here we are with Mark Angel, and the 4 other tables are over there at the other end of the room. So Mark, Angel, and Tamas Vas will work here. So this is table number 1. So, well, I'm not a snob, but I work a lot in English, but sometimes I do not know the English word. But if you don't understand me, so then please let me know. So I introduce myself. So the microphone is just for the web stream. It's not for you, so you hear me without a microphone, but this table here will be streamed on the internet. And that means if you want to take the floor and intervene, you need a microphone. I'm Mark Angel. I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm coming from Luxembourg. I've been a member of the Luxembourg Parliament too. So that's what I explained right before. So we use the microphones just for the internet stream. Well, I'm a member of the European Parliament. I'm the Vice President of the Committee for Labour and Social Affairs. I'm working a lot with Gabi Bischoff, and I'm really happy that Nicola Schmidt is very committed to the topic of social Europe. But I'm a member of this committee for social Europe. So there are 108 representatives of the different European member states. Many citizens are involved from the Committee of the Regions too, representatives of civil society, social partners, but mainly, and that's the aim of this conference, the main aim is to listen to the people. That's why I will soon stop talking, because we need your input. We want to listen to you. Gabi Bischoff explained it right before. And I'm really happy to have Thomas Wasch here from Hungary. He's the man who... so we have our own platform where we exchange with the citizens, where everybody can take part. And Thomas, he was the champion as far as social issues are concerned, and well, he will take the floor in a while. But maybe first you introduce yourself, so I will hand over the microphone to you, and you just in one or two sentences you introduce yourself, because then the people watching us know who you are. Maybe I start here. I'm 28 years old. I'm from Saarlouis in the Saarland. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Hi, I'm Katrina Mislimani. I've been born in the city of Bonn, and I'm studying at the university at Traverse, a student. I'm Edgar Werner Müller, so member of the Social Democrats since 1972, and my special interest is Europe. And to make Europe a social democratic Europe. That's why we need to deal with the future. We have to secure our future. That's more important than the freedom of the market. That's very important. Thank you very much. I will keep this in mind. Michael Gronte, 62 years old, from Saarland region, and I've been working a lot in Europe. My name is Petra Loser. I'm 55 years old, so I'm a cross-border worker. And once I was unemployed, it was complicated, because 3 times I did not get my unemployment allocation, and I had to live from my financial reserve. And well, that was very bad for the planification of my life. It's really good to discuss about this experience. I think Europe has to find solutions for that too. I'm Ursula Terres. Hi. Well, I'm here as a social democrat. But on the other hand, I'm a representative of the Association of Parental. So we are working a lot with this. We try to help these people, and during the pandemic, really felt that it's difficult for them. So without the work of Be Care, and well, unfortunately, this is not paid. But we need this voluntary support. Very important topic, and you know that the European Commission will work out a strategy for nurse care, because we are getting older and older in the future, and we will need more and more staff in this area, and we have to fight for their rights. We have to make sure they get good wages. And well, I'm working on this directive on the transparency for wages. So equal job, equal pay. And we know that in this area, very often the wages are not very good. So during a long time, people thought, well, that's a job for women. It's not only about the pay. It is the work of all those who are working in this area and who are not visible. So the people caring the members of their family at home, given that professional life and private life today is strictly separated, and that's why this doesn't work today as it did in the past. And that is a problem for us. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Niels, 23 years old. I'm a student at the university, and in addition, I'm working because I just need the money. I'm Yannick, 21 years old, and I'm a student at the university too. So now the floor is yours, our special guest, Tomasz. Please introduce yourself, and maybe you can raise questions, ask questions. So give us an introduction to the topic. And then my mission is just moderating our work. Maybe I can ask some questions, but it's up to you to express your ideas. And as Gabi said, later on, we will gather all your ideas, and the idea is that the ideas are coming from the citizens. And 800 citizens have been selected, so randomly. They come from 27 countries. They have great ideas, very progressive ideas. And so some conservative policymakers are really afraid by this.
To introduce myself. My name is Tamás. I come from Hungary, but I lived also in Wien, in Red Vienna. I'm very proud of it, and it was the best place to live. So I understand everything or most of you say. I just choose the English language in order to reach the most of the people through the social media, and not only the European Union but worldwide. Hopefully to reach as many people as we can. And actually, I'm not the main point, but the topics of what we are going to talk about. So thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm looking forward to the great initiatives and proposals we are going to discuss.
Danke, vielen Dank, Tomasz.
Thank you very much, Tomasz. We know that the inner market, the union market, shall be the foundation for a European social model. So when we had the so-called steel and carbon union, so we already had a very small social dimension, so the protection of the worker. And that was the beginning of the social Europe, but during a very long time. So we neglected this social dimension of Europe. And now, due to the pandemic, we see how important the social dimension is in Europe. And we are really happy to have this column, this so the European pillar of social rights. And Nicola Schmidt, so he worked out a very concrete action plan, and I think and hope that this will help Europe to advance in this area. Well, I prepared some questions. From your point of view, if I ask you, mobile workers from other European countries, are they in a worse situation compared to the people from the country itself? Currently, that's the case. Nonetheless, all the efforts done and made. And what could we do to change this? What's the reason for this injustice and unequal treatment? Yes, because the directive, the European directive, is not respected. And there is no central authority in charge. And our trust unions do not have the importance they should have, because their role should be to secure a real social democracy. Thank you very much. I will write down all this. Very interesting. So, well, you said, you made some experiences as a cross-border worker. You have been working in France or in Luxembourg. Please explain a little bit how this worked. Well, I've been living in France and worked in Germany. Do I have to switch on the microphone? So, what's your name? Petra Loser. Well, I've been a cross-border worker because, well, I lived in France and I worked in Germany, and I'm a German citizen. And well, sometimes it was complicated and difficult. For instance, you cannot just buy a mobile phone contract in Germany if you are working abroad. Or, so once I was unemployed, I've been unemployed several times. So you lost your job in Germany, and all of a sudden you had to go to the French unemployment office. Yes, and there were some bureaucratic obstacles. And that's why it was not possible for me to get my unemployment allocation. So fortunately, after a couple of months, I found a new job. But then, because I really needed a job, because I needed to earn some money. Then I had just some temporary contracts. I've been working as an interim worker. I've been exploited. So, I'm an accountant, and that's why I really became sick. I was sick during a long time. And then the worst was, because I was sick, after 18 months, you don't get any more money. That's why I went back to Germany. And from my point of view, if you think, you pay unemployment insurance in Germany, you think you may have the right, or you should not have these bureaucratic problems. So there should be a fund, a specific fund to help these people. Because you cannot just go to the social welfare office, and you do not have any health insurance. So that's why there should be a specific fund provided to these people when they get unemployed. That's a very concrete proposal. That's marvelous. So you may make a comment to this. May I just complete this? In Sweden, you have the so-called ombudsman for these cross-border issues. And the European Commission should set up a body like this. So, an ombudsman to deal with all these frictions, and in order to help the people. That's a great proposal. But we have a European ombudsman. But, he is to deal with many other issues. So a specific European ombudsman for these social issues aimed at helping cross-border workers when they have problems of this kind. So great idea. Thank you very much. May I ask a question regarding housing? Because, in Luxembourg we have a big problem. Housing is getting more and more expensive. More and more Luxembourgish people are living in houses or flats or homes in the neighbor countries. Thomas has been living in Vienna. I've been studying in Vienna, and Vienna has the highest share in Europe of public houses, public homes. So these homes are affordable. These homes are managed by cooperatives, and that's why Vienna is a role model since 80 years. So Vienna has always been governed by the Social Democrats. But please explain us why housing became such a big issue and problem. We know how it is in cities like Berlin. Housing is a big problem.
About mobility, and if we are talking about living and working abroad anywhere in the European Union, for us European citizens, for a Hungarian to work in Austria, for a German to work in France, everywhere where we want as a EU citizen, I think one of the most important topics is housing. Because if we move to another country, then we will probably live in a place where we do not own a house or a flat. So we need accommodation. And where there is no available and affordable, payable accommodation, then we won't be able to live wherever we want in the European Union. So if I want to live in Spain, for example, because I love Barcelona, but if there is no affordable accommodation in the particular place where I want to live, then the basic values of the European Union to move anywhere where we want inside the European Union and work anywhere where we want will not be guaranteed. And this is the point where the Social Europe program, as I call it, the Socialist Europe program, is firmly connected with this topic, because this is why we need social housing. This is what I saw in Wien, because they have a very firm social housing project, a social housing network. A lot of houses are owned by the local state, by the government, and this is how they can push the prices down, because the housing market is not determined by the billionaires, by the oligarchs who own almost all the houses, but they are owned by the social state, and they provide the housing in a non-profit mood, in a way lower prices than for-profit prices. And this is how masses of people can get access to affordable living. And this is the first point, to provide affordable housing to many people, to have a social housing project in every big city all around the European Union. And the second one, the for-profit housing will also be cheaper this way, because if we increase the demand, then the prices will go down. So if there are houses that are in social ownership, that are in public ownership, then if the prices of the for-profit sectors are too high, then people will say no, and they will choose the social services, the public services of the local governments. And so this is not only good because we can provide affordable housing to masses, but it is also good because it will push down the for-profit prices as well. And at free, by having a firm social housing network, this is how we can provide living and accommodation for everyone inside the European Union who wants to live in another country. So we can use this social housing network, and a part of it would be reserved, would be maintained specifically for those people who want to live in that country. For example, if I'm Hungarian and I want to live in Lisbon or in Paris or wherever I want, then I can get contact with the local social housing networking agency. As you perfectly mentioned, it is too bureaucratic now and it is too difficult now. But if we have a social networking, social housing project, then we can provide in a non-profit mood housing that is way cheaper. It will make accommodation way more automatic. It will make it way more faster, way more cheaper, way more easier, and we can strengthen the mobility inside the European Union and the cohesion inside the European Union. So this way I can find easier accommodation in Finland, in Sweden, in Denmark, whenever I want. So having a firm social housing network is needed inside the European Union. I think the European Union needs a very strong social housing politics. We have to buy houses, we have to build houses. Of course, it needs a lot of money. This is why I think the super rich has to be taxed very heavily. And we have to build up the European Union's own social and public services. This is why I call it Socialist Europe program, because it is about public property, it's about social property, it's about socialism. It's not about capitalism, it's about socialism. To have social houses, to have public houses. And this is why I think we have to build up the European Union's own social services, own public services, socially owned and publicly owned, in order our economy not to be dependent on some billionaires, some super rich who exploit the people and raise the rents to the sky, but we have to build up our own social services, our own socialist services, because this is the way we can provide non-profit services in very important areas like housing.
Danke vielmals, Thomas. Das ist wieder, wie du genau.
Thank you very much, Thomas. As you said right before, so that is important. And here, the market failed.
Markt ist.
So, as far as housing is concerned, the market failed. The prices are rising. Nobody can afford to buy a property. And as you said right before, social housing, we have to deal much more with this. Well, we had a very valuable report in the social committee. Nicola Schmidt, the commissioner, is aware of the problem, and that's why, well, we have to provide European funds. There are so many different European funds, and we have to invest in the regions, in the cities. We have to invest money in publicly owned properties. So you wanted to take the floor, so I have to hand over the microphone to you, because otherwise the interpreters, and thank you very much to our interpreters, otherwise they cannot translate. So I have a problem. So I have a problem due to COVID-19. Well, first, I do not speak English. What I want to say, well, I have been searching a flat for a mother with 5 kids, and the strongest discrimination is having kids. So 5 kids. If you have 5 kids, you don't fight. You don't find anything. Well, now finally, this woman found a home. Her daughter went to the youth welfare office, told the office, well, you are here to do something for the kids, and well, now for herself. And the 5 kids, she found a very small apartment. So in the building, there is no elevator. So it is extremely difficult to find an apartment if you have kids. And in addition, what I want to say, well, I'm 81 years old. And you have to know that, well, I still remember that in the past, postal service, railway, the German railways had their own apartments. Many private companies provided apartments to their employees at a very low price or at a reasonable price. And sometimes here in the Saarland region, so the people working in the coal mines, they had their very small homes with a small garden. And well, that does not exist nowadays. There is no postal company, no railway company providing apartments to their employees. Maybe that would be an idea. All those the companies having huge numbers of employees, to oblige them to provide apartments for their employees. From my point of view, that would be a great idea. That's a great idea. Thank you very much. Marvelous. There are 10 minutes left, so we are working hardly. So I'm really thrilled by your ideas. Great, marvelous.
You also wanted to say something? Your name, I'd like to note it down. I'm Ursula. When we're talking about residence, it's rent. And then you have your ancillary, heating, electricity, the utilities. We currently feel it all. And with the high dependency of fossil energy from Russia, that is also a problem in other areas. If we depend on fossil fuels, when gas for heating is more expensive, when fuel is more expensive, it's the poor people who suffer the most because they don't have the money to change their situation. In rural areas, you can't simply say, I'll take the bus because you need an hour more. And there's a lot of mobility offers that are still more expensive, even if gas would be 2, 3, or 4 euros an hour, because the transport companies are not supported sufficiently. It's not mobility in itself, but if heating is too expensive and gas is too expensive, because we are dependent of fossil fuel, and a couple of mostly dictatorial states do changes, and they then lead to suffering of the poor because they can't move to a summer home. They cannot simply change to an electric car. They my family as well, they have petrol-fueled cars. They can't just simply go buy an electric vehicle even if they wanted to. And what's also important, if when you set up such a norm, you need to make sure that it's pushed through. We have seasonal workers in Germany, and we have Polish people and Czech people coming to help for harvesting asparagus and wine. They come here and they often are subject to black market conditions. They get very poor housing. They oftentimes don't even get their wage or only very minimum wage, but they're happy to receive their little salary, if at all, because they have no rights, and then they are being shipped back. That's what we have realized during COVID in the meat industries and slaughterhouses, where so many got infected because they were living in so unhygienic conditions in barracks, as you rightfully said. And that's where Gabi Bischof, who really helped those seasonal workers and gave them a voice and really stood up for the rights of the people. And that's where the German SPD in the European Parliament, together with the Romanian Social Democrats, they worked together because it was a lot of Romanian people who worked in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and for very poor conditions. And Gabi gave them a voice, and we really need to make sure that we have better laws and that the rights of these people will be better protected. If you have a question on co-determination, do you think that mobile workers, cross-border workers, that they have less rights? They have no rights. It's a structural problem. For us in our region, it's something different. A cross-border worker can still join Luxembourg trade union, and they also have offices that are abroad. But for seasonal workers who come from very far, it's often problematic. Do you want to say something? Take the microphone. You also have to say that the German co-determination has been set aside from European institutions, mainly by British and French employers, to limit German co-determination. And if we really get trade unions to be accepted everywhere in Europe, I have a couple of good news for you on that. We have the directive on European minimum wages, and Nicholas Schmidt has already said it's not only about minimum wages, but also on and also on the collective agreements. And we also say that the trade unions need to be strengthened, that collective agreements are very important, because if you have a wage that was negotiated by the trade unions, it is a better wage than if it has just been set up by your employer and yourself. And we have 2 legislative projects to strengthen the trade unions. It may no longer be stopped and blocked. It's one of the lessons learned from the economic crisis, where we've made a lot of mistakes and where we've seen during COVID that you must not forget about the social dimension if you want to solve a crisis.
Point that the energy prices are going up and the living wages are going up, and this is why we need a socialist Europe program, because oil billionaires will not invest in renewable energy resources until not renewable resources are profitable. So this is why we have to invest in renewable energies, because they are cheaper in long way. They are way cheaper, and not only cheaper, but we can also finish with our dependence on dictatorships like Russia, and this is why how we can end up with our dependence, and we can provide energy in a non-profit way to people. And this is why we need a socialist Europe program to provide non-profit services, socialist services to the masses of people, instead of paying the profit of some super rich. And it was a very good point of view.
Du hast noch einen Vorschlag. Ich gebe dir das Mikrofon. Bitte sehr.
Ja, sowohl das Problem der überhitzten
Both the problems of overheated rents and the wandering workers is a problem of disparity, and disparity is a problem. As a landlord, I have 4.4 euros 50 per square meter, and I have difficulties of collecting the increased heating prices. Wandering workers are a result of disparity, and we need a solution here, and you cannot do that with a bulk bike. It's disparity inside the countries and also inside of Europe that is ever growing. You need to take a microphone, otherwise it won't work. And to take care of the Romanian workers, we had the situation of Bostalsee, where precarious workers, you can still find it. Find the mistake online. Finde den Fehler, it's in German. They did not get paid. They did not get care, and DGB, the German Union of Trade Unions, took care of them, paid initial support. That's something we did. Anybody else a suggestion that we can have here? No? Thank you all for your very concrete suggestions. I need to present that. At the very beginning, you said that market cannot regulate everything, and it is very important that we take care of the people, that we provide for the people, and that provision for the people always stands higher than the market. That is sort of the preamble to this talk. Petra's experience were also very interesting, the difficulties with bureaucracy and the small things as well, that you did not get a mobile phone contract because you were living in France and you could not get a German telephone number. It's not part of social Europe, but it's part of the barriers that we have in the common market. And I'm grateful that you mentioned this as well, also these bureaucratic hurdles that forced you to survive concerning your accepting jobs that made you sick, because there was no real sick leave payment and your unemployment benefits that were withheld. Wow. And also a wonderful suggestion from you. We need the ombudsman in Europe. touching on these very problems of 14 million people in Europe who are mobile workers, whether they're seasonal workers or they constantly live in another country, and there's a lot of questions coming up. And I must say that Gabi Bischoff is working a lot on Regulation 883. That touches on many of these problems, but in the Council we cannot move forward. There's countries blocking the motion. Then we had housing, Tomas's topic. We had very little confrontation, very little difficulties. You all shared the topics. Then the problem for single moms, poverty of women, and then the connection to housing. There is a child guarantee now. 5 years ago, we had the youth guarantee. That's a European project where a lot of money is going to the countries so that no young person is without work or an internship or an apprenticeship for more than 5 months. It is being tackled, but it's also the job for the countries, and is the child guarantee, because we have a lot of child poverty in Europe, which is scandalous for the richest continent in the world, that we have so many poor children. And that is often linked to single moms who don't find a place to live, no apartment. And poverty is inherited then. And the social elevator, sometimes it just doesn't work. And then lastly, what also was very important, we talked about seasonal workers, that the posting directive is being misused, and that you really need to take action. And also on co-determination, that it must not be blocked, and we need the social partners and collective agreement negotiations, that more people work in collective agreements. And then there's the freelancers who don't have any co-determination. They have no employer, and they are sometimes being suspected of working as gray self-employed, like the Uber drivers, false self-employment, pizza drivers. They are bogus self-employed, and if the pizza delivery boy falls with his bike, nobody will replace the bike for him. He will not receive sick leave payment. And the people also need to be protected. And it's also a form of contorted competition. An employer who regularly registers his employees, and he cannot cope with a competitor who says his delivery boys are self-employed. And that's something where we in Europe try to not leave it to the market and come up with a European directive. We had a very good initial report in the Parliament, and Commission has taken up a lot of the points that we had in that report. So it's very important. So it's no longer the employee, in quotation marks, who needs to prove that he's self-employed, but it's the principal who needs to prove that they are self-employed.
And then We hope that we will have very soon a new law in order to protect these people because, well, this affects many young people. So we do not have to be against progress. But on the other hand, so having a platform like this, the economy, that's good, but we need rules. We have to limit the freedom, and so there can be no unlimited freedom on the markets. So one more topic, or did I summarize it all? Did I summarize all the topics we addressed and mentioned? You're right. So the cost for energy costs. Yeah, you're right. I understand you.
That people suffer when they want to find.
Children, the case, the discrimination of children, and thank you very much. That was also very interesting. Hast du vielleicht noch eine Frage?
Do you have one more question? Because, well, you are a person with handicap. Is Europe doing enough for people like you? Or so did you hear about the European strategy for people, for disabled people? I heard about this, but well, I do not know the details. I didn't check the details in order to answer the first part of the question. So I made very different experiences in Europe. So in Germany, referring to barriers, if there are barriers for disabled people or not. So it doesn't work that well. But in the UK, for instance, I made quite bad experiences. There are a lot of physical barriers. In Italy, it is better. So what we would need, so we would have to unify much more the framework and the framework conditions, because otherwise you would have these differences between different countries. So the strategy for disabled people. So that's one of the big flagships. So the accessibility. I do not know how to say it in Germany. Yeah, the accessibility to the internet without barriers, without any barrier. But this refers to the access and accessibility to well-paid jobs, or when you are working in a workshop for disabled people, so you have to be paid well, or a European chart for disabled people. So, and that should not be limited to a low entrance price for disabled people when they want to go to the cinema. But for instance, when they want to travel, so a European chart would be helpful for them. When you go to another country, so then this person would have the same rights like in the own country. So yes. So it has to be possible to live in the middle of society. And well, Italy was the very first people abolishing special schools, specific schools for disabled people. So this means there are equal rights for all the children. So I would like to have 1 hour more of time for discussing with you, but unfortunately we have to finalize our discussion here. I wish you the very best. And once you are come to Strasbourg, please join us there. I invite you to visit us there in the European Parliament.
Meine Damen und Herren,
ladies and gentlemen, so may I ask you to come back and have a seat again? So first of all, thank you very much to all of you for taking part in the discussions in the workshops, and I'm looking forward to the results to be presented by us and by the moderators of the different workshops.
Was?
Die Moderator.
Well, the moderators of the different workshops, please, could you come on stage and have a seat here on stage? And then I look forward to the exchange with you. So you may have a seat wherever you want. So please have a seat in the order according to the numbers of your workshops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be good.
Wir gehören ja zusammen hier. Wir sind noch auf der Suche nach einem Mikrofon, was wir noch brauchen. Wir gucken mal. 1, 2, 3. 1 fehlt noch. Nicht aufgetaucht? Noch nicht gefunden? Okay. Mhm. Ja, sonst müsst ihr euch als teilen, wenn die es jetzt nicht finden. Ja. Es ist halt nur diese der Covid-Blödsinn, weil dann... Das stimmt. Echt? Das dürft ihr nicht sagen. Den mal Bescheid. Ich würde sagen, wir...
Well, I would say we should begin. Well, there is one microphone missing. But, well, nonetheless, we said, well, we will share one microphone, so we will keep on wearing our masks, and so then nothing will happen. There won't be a problem. That might be the solution. Ah, no, here it is. Well, so then we will take this microphone. That's great. So then we have enough microphones. Okay, so then I'm really happy because I have the opportunity to present the results of the World Coffee. And first workshop. That was the table moderated by Marc Angel. Do you want to come here on stage and then we talk about what happened and has been discussed? Well, you have been working along with Tamas Vash. Is he here? So let us then just wait for him. But well. So please come over here because you've been working in my group. So how about the result of your discussion? You know, your topic was strengthening the social Europe perspectives or initiatives taken in the border regions. So summarizing it all, what can you tell us? So first, thank you very much to all the participants of my group. I had some students, a pensionist, representatives of trust unions, people working for the European Union, so a very diverse public. And there is something I want to say immediately, because the most beautiful thing at the end was when Petra came to me and said, well, that was so nice that somebody is listening to us. And really, and that's why I said, well, this conference, the conference on the future of Europe, it's worth to do it. Listening to the people, that's great. Well, we've been discussing a lot. And for instance, at the beginning, I raised the question, so mobile cross-border workers, are they worse positioned in other countries? The people say yes currently because the posting directive is not respected. So very often the people do not comply with this directive, and that's why it became clear in our discussion that, the provision of public services is more important than private economy and profit. And in addition, trust unions. And I come back to the topic of wages. So we have to strengthen the position of the trust unions. We need strong trust unions. We need solid collective agreements. We need to modify the directive on minimum wages. We have to improve the position and situation of workers. So collective agreements must apply for much more jobs. And Thomas referred to the topic of housing, and he said, well, housing is becoming more and more expensive. More and more people cannot afford to pay an apartment, and that's why we need much more public initiative in the sector of housing. We need to provide more apartments for people who want to work in other countries. So then we have been talking about seasonal workers, those who work in the agriculture for a couple of weeks or months, and very often they are exploited. Workers from Romania come here to Germany, they are exploited here. And that shows, once again, we need strong trust unions. And there, once again, housing is a problem. And during the pandemic, we saw it right from the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. So in the slaughterhouses, we have hundreds of thousands seasonal workers, and we have to take into account their interest. And you are, so one of the ladies here sitting in the audience, defend their interest. And what Petra explains to us, very interesting. So Petra, well, she's German from the Saarland region. She's been living in France and working in Germany. So just a small detail. So she could not contract a mobile phone contract because she was living in France. Nothing to do with the social euro. But we see that in the internal single market, there are still many things to do. She was unemployed, had to deal with many bureaucratic obstacles. She had to accept a precarious job offered by an agency. So then the worst case arrived. She got sick. So then she had to register again in the German social insurance system in order to get social allocations. And well, two concrete proposals have been made. First proposal, providing an emergency fund for these people, and second proposal, setting up an ombudsman for all the cross-border workers in Europe. So, because there may be so many problems, and that's why we need a specialized ombudsman specifically in charge of these people and their problems. very good proposal, really deserves an applause. Then very interesting, Ursula told us, well, she's a feminist, she's more than 80 years old, she's strongly committed to children with kids, and we said and she said, well, there was a mother searching an apartment. 5 kids, impossible to find an apartment. She said it is easy to find an apartment if you have 5 dogs or 5 tigers, but having 5 kids, impossible to find an apartment. And then she said, well, in the past, postal services, German railway services, the big industrial companies provided apartments to their employees. Today, that's not the case. Why isn't this possible today? And I think that's an interesting idea. Sometimes we have to look back to the history, and we have to come back to things that happened, that worked well in the past, and we should practice it again. That's a good example. Did I forget something? No. Well, but it was a marvelous experience working with these people. So when we, the policymakers, we can learn so many things from the people, citizens, listening to them. And I learned many things today from these people here in the Saarland. And thank you very much to you, Tamás, too. Mark Angel, thank you very much. Thank you to Tamás Vass. Thank you to all the participants of this group. They had a very interesting discussion. They worked out very nice proposals. Second table, working on the topic boosting the economy, opportunities and challenges in border regions, and moderated by Mr. Eugen Roth, Member of Parliament. Please come here on stage, Mr. Roth. How about your group? I think it is switched on. Yes, it works. So how about your group? Well, in my group, so we had a very interesting discussion. We didn't have enough time, but well, we were able to work out some interesting aspects. For instance, opportunities and risks in the border regions. So the people said, well, there are opportunities. They said we have to bundle forces and economic forces, but on the other hand, we are competing with each other. One said this, there is competition between different municipalities in this very small federal state of Saarland. So we have to prevent that anybody wants to just take the cherry on the cake. Then it has been said, well, taxes must be paid on the side where the production takes place. Because, well, we have many multinational companies who do not pay their taxes here in Europe or in our countries. And then how about experimentation fields? So very often we say, well, we are an experimentation lab, but well, it is unclear how this works. So then, keyword here mentioned was best practice. So this means everybody, it should benefit to everybody on the side of the offer, saying, well, we will abolish the collective agreements, maybe then we can increase our profits. No, the answer has been, the basis will be best practice. Let me say, as an experimentation field, the level of the Luxembourgish minimum wage. And then we can see if more people are coming to work to us or less people. Or then next topic addressed, a common training system, traditional training. Securing the same framework conditions in all the countries. Then we said increasing the attractivity by means of European projects under European flag. One colleague said, and that was very interesting, he explained how a multinational company, group of companies, displaced or wants to displace his headquarters to Singapore. And he says, why didn't we try to improve our position here, to position ourselves in a better way? Now we will all be losing if we lose this company. Then we said these border regions are very interesting for semiconductor projects. Well, we know that currently many industries are suffering a shortage of semiconductors. Well, that's on the one hand, that has nothing to do with the pandemic or with Putin's war. So that's a homemade problem. Then we said, here in the Saarland region, with the chair for IT science at the University of Saar. But we said, or they said, it goes much beyond of the CISPA rules. So there are many things to be improved. And then, so abolishing bureaucracy. So we have the so-called A1 certificate you need when you want to go to France as a craftsmanship company. And here it has been suggested to set up an inter-regional body in charge of giving the authorizations. So that was just a very short summary of what we discussed. So please let me know if there is anything I forgot. I do not think so. I do not think so, but I'm not sure. So nobody wants to add something. Thank you very much to all of you. Well, basically, you all would deserve a beer now. Great proposals, great ideas, very practical proposals, and a lot of work. But, well, we are growing with the challenges we face. Well, we keep on going. Table number 3, Christina Jung. Here is about, and Christina Jung, here is about the learnings and the lessons from the pandemic, experiences from mobile workers, male and female workers. How about your work in your workshop? What's the result?
We had a small but very fine table with people who had a lot of experience in cross-border working. We went back to the year 2020, where we had a wonderfully working, the largest cross-border labor market. And from one day to the next, all these people woke up and the borders were closed, and we saw where the problems are. We realized that, especially for young people, this was a large shock because they never lived through border controls, except they had relations outside of Europe. But for most of them, it was shocking to see, which led to multiple actions on the borders where activists have simply taken away the borders that have simply been set up. And partially they've been set up on French territory as well. We've also wondered what these cross-border institutions and organizations are useful if you can't rely on them once you need them. And why did we feel so powerless? Because the competencies are on the federal level and not in the regions where they would be needed, and where we would have needed common rules to not have this useless situation where people would have to go kilometers a detour to come to work. And it touched me personally, even though we didn't discuss it. But people living in separation were unable to see their children, and people were unable to go to doctors because nobody was capable of taking them across the border. We also realized that the situation escalated, that there was a two-class system with French workers to be tested in the morning, and Germans, if they wanted to, could have been tested. But it led to situations where people did not want to sit together anymore, or that they didn't want the French colleagues to come to work at all. And the politicians contributed to this escalation with the Minister of the Interior, who said every Frenchman who is stopped at the border is a good Frenchman. That caused a lot of distress here in the area, and it also led to people being insulted. One last point was that Germany should not take any special routes when implementing European law, for instance with Social Security, but Gabi Bischoff will take care of that with Directive 883. And we also need better exchange between the administrations and institutions so that we know whom to talk to. Maybe Erasmus for police or for administration. We need more valuation for the situation that here on the border we have positive effects, whether it's economic or cultural. We need to realize that we benefit from this border. And Albana said the most beautiful sentence right in the beginning: we are only strong if we stick together, and that is a good summary of what we have discussed. Thank you. Table number 4 was a young table. Living and learning across borders, opportunities for young people was the topic, with Lisa Kasch and Kira Braun, who were moderating those. Please come join me on stage. What was it like for you? It's a very interesting topic. I've seen that you had a very lively discussion. What did you take from your talk? Well, at our table we had a lot of young people to discuss with us, because learning and education are important topics for young people. We talked about that there is a lot of exchange programs, and that those who participated also benefited immensely from those problems, but oftentimes it's an academic project that we need to strengthen. Erasmus Plus for the apprenticeships, that many trainees don't know how to make use of these projects, and also for these exchanges in terms of pupil internships. It is impossible to have so many unpaid internships that young people contribute and put in their workforce, and in the end they get a soft handshake and maybe a bar of chocolate. And we also need to come up with sustainable structures, but with partner schools, that we extend cooperation, that there's multiple exchanges instead of a unique situation of being somewhere else once. And exchange programs must not be decided by the wallet. In Saarbrücken, if you live in a small apartment where you cannot host an exchange student, that must not be the hurdle to this exchange. It's not an academic project, it's for the benefit of all the young people, and that's something we really need to work on. I have one other question. Especially the young people suffered from the pandemic. What have you heard about that? Is there anything where we can improve and where we can come back, and we need to do something now? We realized that it's welcome to ask this question, but of course you cannot give back time. If you spent the last 2 years at home and did not benefit from your study years or from your apprenticeship years, it's something that you cannot be returned. But what we realized is what you can improve and make better is to strengthen international exchanges, to bring in the structures that would help youngsters benefit from these programs like Erasmus for apprentices, that unions play a much more important role in these programs, and that's something where we think we can have more. And another realization was that young people are not only frustrated by COVID. It was hard, of course, but it was hard for everyone. And there is frustration that had built up before that we talk about European values, and that everyone says you youngsters cannot understand about the war because you did not live through the war. The solidarity being the foundation of Europe in 2015 when we had the refugee crisis, that created a lot of frustration with the young people instead of COVID. It's a good approach, and I hope that those who are competent here in the room have understood what you've said. Then there's table number 5, fostering border regions as political and cultural spaces, living labs. Timo Stockhorst, what was it like for you? We were a small table with a big topic, and it was a lot of fun to talk about it. And what did you come up with? Do you feel more European once you've studied or worked in another country, or does that not play a role? We have not found a concrete answer to this question, but it is part of the European identities that are crucial to the border regions, and one aspect is language, with the greater region not being an exclusive construct. Understanding the other's language is always the basic prerequisite, but also to feel as part of a border region is made up of how you are educated about that. In Saarland, we have binational kindergartens and schools, but it could be much more. But then you come to a point with Saarland being alone. Yes, we have Luxembourg and France, and the various regions and political levels that clash. It's difficult to really move forward together, which is why I would very quickly come to our final product. Of course, COVID had its impacts on our lives, on the region, on our thinking about regions and Europe, that not everything was working well. And the basic problem we have in Europe is that it's 27 countries who try to promote their own interests very well, and that's something you realize in the border regions, with national interests clashing with European ideas and ideals. Starting from transformation policy, labor policy, social policy, and also here in the border region, it's something. There is cross-border status between France and Germany and Switzerland, and Switzerland and France, and that's binational treaties. And what would be very nice for border regions, not just here, but all the border regions, would be a special status to get the best from all national regulations. No more binational treatments, but instead supranational, newly created laws for greater regions, for cross-border regions, that you cannot register a mobile phone when you come from France. We have moved forward a lot that we have harmonized the law. But in border regions, there is a lot of things that are still missing. And that's our answer as a group, which is why border regions need a special status to really overcome these small problems and issues fast and unbureaucratically. And that would then maybe lead to creating a joint identity and to tell a common story. Maybe what Europe can learn from the border regions is that identities are in the regions, and border regions can be a face of Europe, and that needs to be expressed in the form of elections and co-determination. Thank you to the moderators, to the various tables, to the discussions. One essential thing I forgot. We are entre nous, as we say. We can. It's quite fast, and especially the trade unionist forgot to say we have taken a vote on co-determination in the end, and we were very unanimously in favor of more co-determination based on the example given in the coal and steel industries. We have learned a lot during these discussions at these tables. It was a very wonderful exchange. Thank you all for your time and your power. And before I ask Ms. Bischoff once again to come up on stage, I ask you to leave the platform, and I'd like to welcome back Gabriele Bischoff and look forward to her conclusions. Well, after so much work, I can only quote Eugen. I like to do that because at the very beginning he said, "You all deserve a beer now," or whatever you like. We have taken care of that. But once again, I wanted to say that this was a really great experience because at the tables, we realized how committed you were in your discussions, and that was a future conference in small. And we've seen that something is created when people with different experiences come together and look at what goes well, what does not go well, and in the end they come up with very concrete and specific examples and suggestions, and I've taken some of them because we are still members of the European Parliament, and we have really collected a couple of suggestions in terms of the ombudsman, in terms of education, the exchange that student exchange not being an exclusive project for academia, and how you can strengthen and foster that. Also very nice. Border regions give Europe a face, and that needs to be expressed in the form of elections, and how important it is that if we listen to each other, we create something together, we come up with suggestions on how to improve Europe, which is our Europe, so that we have a warm feeling when thinking about Europe and knowing that our lives and our well-being depend on it. And I want to close with one last statement. The wish of the grandfather that we do not have to go through hunger and war. And the idea of the project was to improve the well-being of the people, and that in the border regions we have good experiences that need to go to Berlin much more, or in other parts of Germany? Do people in Germany really understand what is happening here in the border regions, what the problems are, and how we can improve that? And also, time and again in the working groups, that for common policies, we need common institutions as well, and we need to come up with good solutions. And why does she keep talking? What is holding me back from beer or wine? Nothing further. Europe needs the people who contribute, and Europe also needs the people who know how to benefit from life, how to enjoy life. I'd like to also thank those who made it possible that people managed to talk to each other in different languages, and that is one of the prerequisites for a good and prosperous Europe. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing all of you again to exchange a bit further. And we have big pockets now with your suggestions to really contribute them to the work groups on the European policy level. Thank you very much.
Genau. Es war ein wunderschöner Abend und
It was a very wonderful evening. And if I think about Europe, then sometimes I think about a big table with friends and family, with food on the table, with good things and things that you can share, you can discuss. And of course there is a fight sometimes, but you are together, but not in this huge family always, and you can always go your own way. Not everybody living together, but everybody respecting each other, valuing each other. That is my image of Europe, this large family table. And you all tonight have contributed to us coming closer to that table. And we close these evenings or these series of events with the European anthem. I'd like you all to stand up for the anthem. Get home safe. Thank you all.